Welcome to the Sports Spectrum podcast. I'm your host, Matt Forte, with Jason Romano, my man Jay Nice. And we have a great guest today, returning guest, Texas Longhorns head baseball coach, Jim Schlossnagle, who has been on here before. Welcome back, Coach.
Glad to be here. Honored to be here with both you and Jason, man. You guys are doing some amazing work. Big fan.
And you as well. I wanted to start with, since you've been on here before, with your Jesus story. Just give us a little background, I guess, a little testimony of your faith story and how that came about.
Yeah, I mean, I was very fortunate, still am. Both of my parents are still living. To grow up in a Christian home. All my grandparents, everything. I grew up in church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, my entire life up in Western Maryland. And my parents did go through a divorce when I was about 8 or 9 years old. And I remember that obviously being a very traumatic thing. Even the quote unquote best divorces are still really bad, I believe. And so I remember about that time is when I accepted Christ as my Lord and Savior and went through that process, baptism, so forth. And, certainly have been a believer ever since and continue to, as I tell the recruits, there's only ever been one perfect person in the history of the planet, and they nailed him to the cross. Everybody before and after has failed and will continue to. But as a 54-year-old guy, you learn by screwing up, and certainly I feel like my faith is at its peak in this time.
Yeah, I agree with that, Coach. Experience will teach us all, and that's one thing I appreciate about coaches, that they've often coached me and told me never be afraid to fail, because those who are brave enough to do that, they learn and continue to go and build from there on. And I've always, and Jason has heard me talk about this before too, I see coaching as a calling, not as some kind of occupation or position that you just do on a daily basis, but coaching is a calling. Talk about your calling as a coach, and when did you, I guess, discover that? When did God kind of reveal that to you? And then also, the passion that comes from behind it.
Yeah, I think, I was a very average NAIA baseball player at Elon College when I was there. It's now Elon University in North Carolina. And I was a journalism major. And all I ever wanted to do growing up was write for Sports Illustrated. And thank goodness that, the Lord led me a different path. Print media is, obviously not a thing too much anymore. But my college coach called me in my sophomore or junior year, and he looked at me and said, "Hey, we both know you're not playing in the big leagues. I think you'd make a good coach, and I think you would be better served by redirecting your effort and energy into that." And I really thought, his name's Rick Jones, I thought he hung the moon. Thought a lot of his opinion of me, and he was a man of Christ as well, still is. And so I stepped away from the team for a week and then came back and said, okay, I'm all in, and proceeded to change my major to education, get my teaching certification, fully planning on getting to go be a high school coach and work my way, up to college baseball. And so I was a student assistant coach my last 2 years at Elon. And then I got super lucky in the summer of 1992. There was a bunch of rule changes in the NCAA that created a thing called a volunteer coach, which was really bad for a lot of guys because they didn't want to work for free and they moved on to other things. But it was actually a really good thing for a 21-year-old guy graduating college that, when you're that age, you just need barely enough money to pay the rent and buy a loaf of bread and some sandwich meat and you're good. And so I at 21, right before my 22nd birthday, I got a job at Clemson University, for a unbelievable man, a legendary coach named Bill Wilhelm. And that was in the summer of 92. And I was at Clemson for 1 year. And then my college coach got the head coaching job at Tulane in New Orleans. And I went to Tulane, and I coached there for 8 years. Love New Orleans, roll wave,
That's right.
and then
Jim, let me say, I don't know if you know,
I
Mr.
know Matt went to school there. Yeah,
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 I was gonna say that. I was like Rick Jones. I remember that name from when I was there.
yeah.
And you know, Tulane has always been really good at baseball, and you know, us being on the football team, we're trying to make our way to kind of
Yeah.
compete with that. And you know, I think thankfully now that they're doing a lot better. But
Oh yeah.
no, I mean, let's talk about your time at Tulane a little bit too. Under you know Rick Jones and him being you know a legendary coach as well. What kind of things did you learn from him?
Yeah, I mean, I think I learned. I mean, I learned a lot from him. Obviously, baseball stuff, but really, what I learned is I think you can be as a coach, you can be a guy that coaches a team, which is this year's team, and that's super important. Uh, but if you can also, be run a program, a comprehensive, all-inclusive program. So, in other words, the recruiting, at a small private school like Tulane, you're dealing with a super high cost of attendance and trying to manage what is effectively a salary cap as a small market team, compared to LSU, for instance, in the state of Louisiana, which was a lot cheaper and had other advantages. Fundraising, just dealing with everything that goes with building and maintaining a program and a culture that is sustainable over time. And Rick Jones did that at Tulane, as you know, for a very long time. He's a Hall of Fame coach. We went to the College World Series in 2001 for the first time ever in school history. And then in 2005, I was gone. I was the coach at TCU by then, but they were the number one seed in Omaha in 2005. And so to do that, as you know, Matt, at Tulane, kind of in the shadows of LSU in New Orleans, is an awesome accomplishment. And what it really did is it set me up to have success, being the coach at TCU, another smaller private school in a big state, kind of, in the shadow of places like Texas and Texas A&M and all the big state universities in Texas. So it was awesome learning environment. Worked for great athletic directors. Got to be around, 1998. The football team at Tulane was, with Tommy Bowden as a coach and Sean King at quarterback. Being
Yep.
around that, watching that transformation that Coach Bowden had coming in, and I guess it would be 97 and 98, and then he went to Clemson. But watching that I learned a lot from that too, and that was a fun time to be in New Orleans.
Yeah, I've seen it where there's like I know from a player perspective, I've wanted to come into teams and um, into different programs and want to transform it from the inside out as a player. A lot of that I would say you know equally kind of rest on the coach as well to be able to create a culture within a program and transform it from what it was maybe in the past or maybe to into what it should be. Uh, and it should be studied because you know, it's an art to doing that, and there's an art to coaching, and that's something that I value as a player, being around uh, not people like as you said, which stuck out to me, people that can coach. There's people who can coach a team, and then there's people who coach the full athlete. You know, give me your perspective on the difference in that. What is the difference in coaching the team and just coaching the team that's there that year, and coaching the fullness of an athlete that is under your coaching?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the difference in it's about what you stand for. Like we have a mission here. We have a mission statement. We have core values that we live by every day. And you create that process. We have a system for everything that we do. And hopefully you're working for an administration. I've been super lucky to have that believes in the long-term value of a program, because it's super, especially in today's world, NIL, transfer portal. It's actually super easy to make short-term decisions without thinking about the long-term impact. And so, you want to be able to make decisions that are in the best interest of the player, even though they may not think that's in their best interest. You want to be able to discipline a player um, the right way. And, there's a chance, usually it doesn't happen this way, but there's a chance it may cost you losing a game. I mean, especially if it's one of your best players, or maybe it's a pitcher that was supposed to throw that day or whatever. But normally those things don't happen that way. You make the choices in the best interest and in the long-term benefit of the player. in their overall well-being, and usually all those things work out the way they're supposed to work out. And so for me, I feel like I'm in the character and leadership development business through the sport of baseball. I didn't play professional baseball. I've never coached, nor at least right now will I ever want to coach in professional baseball. I enjoy the college aspect of developing the entire player, and understand, I mean, I have coached at some awesome places, and I want to help them become major league players too. But I do believe you can chase being the best version of yourself overall as a player, in your faith, if that's part of you. And so I think if I'm able to be a part of, I shouldn't say if we are able to create a system and a culture that allows super talented people to become the very best version of themselves, the baseball stuff will actually take care of itself. And it's going to give us the best chance to be successful. And then, the bounce of the ball, as you know, in any sport, maybe you win a national title, and that'd be awesome. Came close last year at A&M. But that's not going to define anybody's career, certainly not going to define mine.
Yeah, when I've been on teams, and especially around some of those coaches, as you've mentioned, who are leadership and character and integrity wise focused, winning was not the main focus. Everybody wants to win. It's almost a given when it comes to that. And then when it comes to developing young men, especially, that can be shaped in a way that coaches have influence on them, that leadership and the character part actually comes ahead of it, and kind of the wins fall into place, as I've seen. Now, you've been to 7, college World Series appearances. So you've got a lot of experience there. Do you feel any pressure as of last year being at Texas A&M and leading them to the college baseball World Series finals? And you guys lost to Tennessee, but how do you reconcile the pressure to always get right back to, we didn't get the championship this year, but to go right back to that same level, as everybody sets their standard, right? Like, everybody wants to win a championship. You don't go into the season saying, I hope we do okay, or, win 500, how do you reconcile the pressures to perform at a high level every single year?
Yeah, that's a big challenge, because I'm, as much as faith is a part of my life, and I do believe in the long-term process of developing the young person, and that's really my mission and purpose, I'm super competitive too. And I want to win the games. And in those moments, I definitely haven't been perfect. Nobody has. Your body language may not be what it's supposed to be. You may say something you shouldn't say because you are competitive. And those are the things, I pray for that before every game, that I, am a Christian leader throughout the course of every day, but especially throughout the course of this game. And so I think, you hear, I've been doing this 35 years. I have plenty of my buddies that I've grown up with in coaching who have won a national championship, and they all say the same thing. The very next day, you hear Coach Saban talk about it in football. The very next day, you're right back at it, thinking about the next season, or it doesn't change you. So I sure would like to win one and then feel that, but
let me know let me experience that for myself.
The guys who never won one, are never able to say that, but no, I mean, I think you just try and keep the main thing. And if we're going to have a mission statement, which the mission statement for the programs that I've been a part of it's always been the same. It's to help each and every person within the program become the very best selfless version of themselves. That's the mission, the key word being selfless. And so I have to be careful in those moments to not be selfish and pout and, be upset about it. But I am competitive. And so I think that's the dichotomy that every coach has to deal with. I mean, if you're not competitive, you can be for all the character and intangible things we're talking about, but you're not going to have a job. In even college baseball these days, it's grown to the point where coaches and programs are, there's a lot of money invested in staffs and programs, especially at this level. And now it used to be no one would pay much attention to you in college baseball as long as you didn't screw up in a major way. And now, they'll fire coaches and they'll fire them quick and move on to the next guy. And then here being a place like University of Texas, like Coach Sark says every day, the standard is the standard. The winning tradition at the University of Texas will not be entrusted to the timid nor the weak. And that's in your brain every day. And so, but you have to I'm not afraid of that. But you do have to just in your own mind, I guess you have to determine what your scoreboard's going to be. And for me, obviously I want to win, but I think the scoreboard has to be developing relationships and developing young people to become great, productive members of society.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that about fear, because, I mean, let's be honest, in coaching, your perspective is a little bit different than as a college athlete. If you don't perform well in college, you're not really likely to get cut. They don't really do that. They may let you keep your scholarship. You just probably won't play. But when it comes to coaching, I mean, your job's on the line, right? How do you balance that? Not operating in fear. I'd say not operating in fear with that looming over you as a coach. That, hey, I got to produce wins, and the product sometimes or most times will show in the way that I coach what's put out on the field. But sometimes you can coach your heart out, and you have the most talented team, and wins don't come sometimes. So, how do you not operate in fear? And I ask that because, there may be someone listening that maybe is not even in sports. They maybe have a normal job and they have to produce in some sort of way. And they may be afraid that, man, if I don't do this, I'm going to get demoted or fired, or I don't know when the next door is going to open.
Yeah, I think, what we do, or what my thought process is I try to stay away from goals, right? If I was to ask you, Matt, when you're playing for the Chicago Bears, what's your goal? Your goal is to win a Super Bowl. Your goal is to be an all-pro player or play in the Pro Bowl, whatever that is, right? And I think goals are great, but if you ask a college baseball player or coach, what is it? To win the SEC championship, win the College World Series. Goals are performance-based, which are very, very much out of our control. Standards are behavior-based, which are very much within our control. And so I think that, I can put my head on the pillow at night after losing the national championship game or after not, having the best year and say, dang it, the ball didn't go our way. Tennessee, they deserved it. They outplayed us. We gave it every effort. We went 53-15 last year at Texas A&M. And I mean, how can you be upset with that when you just, you lose the last game by, I think it was a run. But there's been other years where the team hasn't had success, and I had to look myself in the face and say, there were things that were within my control that I did a poor job of. And so I would, I think if I ask the players to live by a standard and live by core values, then I have to do the same thing. And if we're doing all of that stuff correctly and making good choices, or at least making more good choices and fewer bad choices, because they're all not going to be perfect, then that's all you can do, whether you're selling cars, selling insurance, or anything else. I mean, you create good processes, you stick to them, you create good routines and habits of excellence and stick to them. And then obviously, in the context of this conversation, your why, I don't think when I'm standing at the pearly gates that God's going to let me in relative to how many wins or losses we've had. I mean, we can win 1,000 championships, but if I'm a horrible person or I'm not saved by his grace, then, they're going to be sending me somewhere else. So yeah. I think that's ultimately, that's my purpose.
Yeah. I always tell a lot of the youngsters that I'm in contact with that's in pro sports or even collegiate sports, but then my sons that are in athletics as well, that obedience does not necessarily give you wins. Being obedient to the Lord and then having a structured standard as you are an athlete doesn't necessarily always match out to wins, but it does give you opportunity.
It gives you the best chance, right? I'm telling you guys, we can make if we all made the most perfect decisions the whole season and we stayed healthy, which we're not, the whole season, that doesn't guarantee us anything.
Mm-hmm.
It gives us the best chance though, and so let's strive for that. And when I was in College Station last year, my church men's group, we did an awesome book study, a book called The Titus 10. And a chapter in there talks about your identity, a man's identity versus his assignment. And one common question we get as college coaches is the challenge of coaching today's athlete. I can't stand the phrase, these kids today. Like, I hate that. I think it's a crutch. So I think kids still want discipline and accountability, and they want to be held to a standard. What's different for young people today is what they compare themselves to, relative to social media. And if you're going to start playing the comparison game of you versus somebody else, or me versus, some other coach that won a national title, that's going to be tough. I ask them to compare themselves to themselves yesterday. What were you like yesterday? Can you be a little bit better in certain areas of your life today? And so I think today's athlete, or even myself at 54 years old, sometimes who you are is not, it's not what you do. Like, if we lose, I'm not a bad guy. If we win, I'm not the best guy. And same thing for a player. And so my identity is who I am in Christ, who I am as a father, who I am as a brother. My assignment currently is college baseball coach. Eventually, hopefully not anytime soon, but eventually that'll change into something else. And so it's harder to get young people to understand that, because at 19, 20 years old, they think they're going to play baseball forever. But I definitely remind them that even if you play 8 or 10 years in the big leagues, you're going to spend way more of your life not as a baseball player than you are as a baseball player. And so if baseball is going to be your defining characteristic, that's fleeting. It's not stable.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. I love that, because assignment is not your identity. And I say it again so we can, the listeners can hear that assignment is absolutely not identity. And I think that's the main struggle, because there's so many different assignments that God may have in his plan for you. And it may be a season of this assignment, or a season of that one. And I mean, Jason, we talked about it many times before too on the podcast, that, Coach, my 10 years in the NFL went by like that, so fast.
Yeah.
And you have to, know who your identity is in, and have that rock solid identity be in Christ, so that you know your purpose. Our time here on earth is tied to that. So we got to know that. You mentioned your home church when you were at Texas A&M in College Station, and the study that you guys were doing, which is, that speaks for itself, how you're pouring into yourself. But as a coach, how do you stay filled? Because you pour out so much as a coach into the coaching staff, into recruiting players, into the current staff and players. How do you stay filled?
Yeah, I try to. We have a peak performance coach, or mental game coach, I guess you would say, that I've used since 2006, named Brian Kane. And he has turned into somewhat of a life coach for me. And what I try to do is, same thing I ask the players to do, is create consistent morning routine, consistent what we call PM routine, evening routine. So AM in the morning, PM in the evening. Try to be as consistent with those as possible. And, invest in myself with exercise, invest in myself with quiet time, whether it be Bible study, a book study, a podcast. You have so many things today. There's a lot of bad things about a phone, but there's a lot of great things about just the accessibility to clicking on Apple Podcast, or going to YouTube and clicking on Rick Warren's sermon, or Max Lucado, or my church where I currently am, or maybe even churches that I've attended in past in other cities, and so just continue to bring myself back, what I would say, back to the middle, right? When things are going awesome, get back to the middle. When things aren't going so great, get back to the middle. And so, I try to create those habits. Again, it doesn't create perfection. And I'm sure there'll be some people, I'm not I'm positive there'll be some people that watch this and say, boy, he screwed up in this area and screwed up in that area. And I think sometimes Christians, especially in sports, this is definitely something I wanted to talk to you guys about. I think people give less grace in sports when someone, you're going to make a mistake. I totally screwed up in the post-game press conference after the College World Series national championship game. And I apologize for it. It was emotional, bad response to a question. But that doesn't make anybody a hypocrite. It just shows that we're imperfect, right? Just because
Makes you human.
Just because you're a Christian doesn't mean that you're going to make the right choices, right? Just try harder the next time or be better the next time and learn from it. So I'm kind of getting around about your question, but I just really try to invest in myself. And I think one thing about being here, coaching at Texas, being in Austin, is there's plenty of opportunities to do that. I think you dive into your church. I think you surround yourself with a very, very small circle, which I'm searching for that here in Austin. I had that in College Station, had it in spades in Fort Worth. I was there for 18 years. A group of guys normally that preferably aren't in athletics, that don't see you as coach. They see you as Jim or a Jason or Matt, and somebody you can be open with and pour into you and have that super tight circle that can help you be accountable. And so that's something I think everybody needs.
Yeah, I see that sports often masks our humanity to those who are entertained and who watch it. Therefore, there isn't a lot of grace when it comes. It's like you're either bad or you're good.
Yep.
And there's no middle ground, which, when we think about Romans 8:28 and how God causes all things to work together, that's even when we mess up in a post-game interview. That's even when we don't say the right thing or, oh, that's not Christ-like. Perfection, as we talked about before getting on the podcast, perfection was Jesus, and they crucified him. So, we can only try to be even close to that, and we're going to get the same treatment. But Jay, I know you had something else for Coach.
Well, I'll stay on this topic for a minute because I think I don't know why, but I've seen this because of what we do, what I've been doing for the last 8 years, just following coaches and athletes and other people in the world of sports. And we want to highlight them, but ultimately what we're trying to do is highlight Jesus. But I see this with a lot of Christian sports fans. I'll just say that, or people that would claim to be Christian sports fans. They're the first person to scream and yell when somebody like Matt Forte, let's say, drops a bad word or something when he gets hit hard in the middle of a game, or what happened to you, Coach. I just want to get your thoughts on, not to ever say I'm perfect and go easy on me or whatever, but I think there's got to be a level of accountability from fans, if that makes sense too, to not, we take it so seriously as fans. We've seen it, as we record this with college football going on, like the fans are just going crazy right now over their teams, and that's in all college sports. But I just think that there's a responsibility that we have to remember that these people are human too.
Yeah, I think certainly when you play in the national championship game as the coach at Texas A&M, and the very next night you're the baseball coach, not at another school, you're the baseball coach at the University of Texas, right? I knew that would be obviously incredibly crazy and dramatic. I didn't know it would be somewhat apocalyptic with the reaction. And I think I've tried to, one of the Bible verses that I didn't even know, but now I've trying to live by is in Romans, as far as it depends on you, treat everybody with kindness and grace, like with your words. And so I think on one hand, when I was at TCU and A&M, you can't as a coach, part of my job is to build a fan base and to have them be excited and to get them to the games and create, there's already plenty of passion, but, I was very passionate, for example, at A&M about season ticket holders not using their tickets, and let's send them back in. We got to get more people at the games. And we ended up, our Tuesday night games in college baseball are usually not that well attended. And we're having 6,000-7,000 members of the 12th man show up to every game, and it was awesome. They responded. They did exactly what we asked. And then, for my own personal reasons, I decided to make a job change, and it was like we never won a game. And you're the most horrible person ever. And I get it. I get the timing. The optics of it are horrendous. I understand it all. But I do believe that, and I'd be interested to hear what other coaches feel about this, is when in 2016, I was the coach at TCU, and the famous coach here, there's actually been 4 Hall of Fame coaches here, but Augie Garrido was a longtime coach here, and he asked me to come visit him in California in the summer. And that was the first kind of little inkling of, at some point I may end at Texas. And he asked me, and he said, "Hey, how would you feel about being the next coach at Texas?" And I said, "Well, obviously that would be of interest. Tell me what it's like." And he said something to me that I have lived by ever since. He said, "The program will never belong to you." And that's the programs belong, like Matt played at Tulane. The program belongs to him. The program never belonged to Tommy Bowden. He didn't go to Tulane, right? I don't want this to sound harsh, but I didn't go to TCU. I would love to have gone to TCU. I coached the Horned Frogs. I coached the Aggies. I coached the Longhorns, right? And yes, I'm all in, but Jimbo Fisher was all in coaching the Aggies too, and they're paying him $75 million to not coach the team, right? No one gets upset when they fire you. So, I don't know where I'm going with this thing, other than the fact that I can look myself in the face and say, I gave every ounce of my being to do the very best job that I possibly can at Texas A&M and TCU, and for personal and some professional reasons, decided I needed to do something different. There's no need to really get into the depths of that, but I wasn't looking to stick it to the Aggies. But I think people take it so personal. One of my very dearest friends still to this day in College Station is the pastor at my church there, Philip Bethencourt, and we talk all the time. And I said, "Philip, if you'd have left, you have the biggest church in College Station. If you'd have left the biggest church in College Station to pastor the biggest church in Austin, would your congregation have reacted like this?" And he laughs, and there's always a small percentage of everything, but something about sports, man, it is what it is. And so I think as a coach, what I've definitely learned, even the people who have sent me the nastiest things, done the nastiest things you could ever imagine, I don't hold it against them, man. It's just, it comes with the territory, and, I'll be okay.
Yeah, Jay, I feel like this goes along with coaches as well as players, is to hold everything loosely when it comes to that. I don't own the Chicago Bears. I don't own the records I've set. They will be broken one day probably. And, just like at Tulane, even now, it's the next generation of players that really own the program. It belongs to them because they're carrying it and not each coach.
Back to assignment too, like same sports spectrum, Matt. Like you and I are holding this loosely because this is the assignment that God has called us to do right now, and to coach and to talk to Coach Jim. But like this is just, it's an assignment, like you said, Coach. I think that was a really prominent. I think that's the biggest thing I'm going to take away from this conversation was identity versus assignment. It's all fleeting.
It is, and I think one thing that's really unique in this that fans don't understand is the people that actually understand it the most are the players. Like there are players at Texas A&M who honestly, they can't even publicly come out. A few have, but I don't encourage them to. They can't even come out and say anything super positive because the fan base would just crush them as well. But players, like when a guy is in his junior year in college baseball, I think players have to be double-minded, or they are double-minded. The major league, they're draft eligible, so they're doing everything they can. Our juniors are doing everything they can to help Texas win the College World Series, but they also have the major league draft on their mind. And that's part of a learning process, because I'm sure when Matt's playing in the NFL, if you're a free agent when the season's over, and you're playing for the Bears, you're doing every single thing you can for the Bears until the day the season is over. And the very next day, if the biggest rival, if the Packers offer you the best deal, well, that's probably where you're going to end up. And the fans are probably going to blow you up for that. But it is what it is. And so I think the players truly get it, as long as you treat them the right way. And, I've had plenty of those guys that, hey, we love you, coach, stinks to see you go, but we wish you the best, obviously, except for the games we play. But yeah, man, it's just hold on loosely. I like that. That was a good song in the 80s, actually. But
it was 38 Special. Let's go.
38 Special. Maybe that needs to be my theme song, but we'll see.
Yeah.
It reminds me of like when Dion decided to take the job at Colorado, and people, and it was unfortunate because you saw a lot of people from the Black community too, because it was HBCU. How he really like energized that university, how he energized HBCU sports, and like people paying attention to it. And then want to call him a sellout and this and that. It's like his job was to coach. His plan was always to take the next professional step in coaching, and you can't get mad at that. And I think the human predisposition and default setting, as you have a phone with a default setting, ours is division and being attracted to things that are sensationalized and like the negative stuff. And it takes Christ in us to really be drawn towards loving people, loving others, and despite their faults, right? And Coach, I think you have probably a master's degree in understanding people because you've coached so many different types of personalities.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could speak on that.
Yeah, I think it's a constant learning project, but our athletic director, Chris Del Conte, uses the phrase, we're operating a business on somebody else's passion, right? And our biggest donors would never react at any school. I shouldn't say any big donor. Sometimes you'll see these people that have been ultra successful at whatever they do, and they've created these awesome processes in their own life and their own business. But when it comes to their team, they're so passionate and they just lose their mind on the decision of an 18-year-old, or did Quinn Ewers, how can he throw that ball away? Well, he's 20 years old. It's an imperfect person playing an imperfect game. You would never react that way in your business, but you do it with your team. And so when you're trying to run a business, as Chris uses, on other people's passions, that's what you're going to deal with, plain and simple. Yeah.
Well, Coach, man, it's been so much wisdom that you've given us, and we just want to thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Well, Coach. Yeah. It's an honor to be on with you guys, and you guys are doing a great service and in a great ministry, and appreciate, and just stay strong.
Hey, thanks for watching Sports Spectrum here on YouTube. You can click our next video, or you can check out our website, sportsspectrum.com.